It's great to have you here on the Neurodifference Podcast, Storm. Could you inform myself and our listeners about your background and your connection to neurodivergence, i.e. diagnosis or groups that you're a part of, please?
Okay, so I'm a late diagnosis person. I was diagnosed when I was 50, and it has made a massive difference to my life because as a child, I was that odd one who never had any friends, didn't get on with people. In the workplace, I asked too many questions. I was seen as challenging authority when I wasn't. I was just like, when I asked, why do you do something? It's because that's the way my brain works. I need a reason. So my basically career progression was zilch. I was employed on minimum wage up until basically I got my, or just above minimum wage. You know, I was the lowest band you could be, if you like.
Oh, band. Yeah, quite right.
Yeah. So then I got my diagnosis and I went through quite a cycle of emotions and feelings. First was, yes, I've got a reason for all those things I used to go to the GP about. I used to ask people, what's wrong with me? Now I knew. Then I went through a real down point of, well, I know, but you can't fix it. And then it was just basically working on learning what my traits were, what my needs were, and what my differences were, and trying to make the best of what I had. So I've obviously got lots of good positive points everybody has in this world. I have an inquiry mind, a scientific mind. I learn. When I learn things, I learn things. I learn in a different way, but I can grasp new concepts. I can hyper-focus. I can get things done well, clearly, in a short time. But my communication difficulties, particularly with groups, is what has always made me feel isolated. So I had my diagnosis. I started learning about myself. And through just something completely random, I met what turned out to be my best friend, who is also neurodivergent, and introduced me to the comedy circuit, which is basically neurodivergent. And all of a sudden, I had this group of friends that I'd never had before because they were all neurodivergent. We got each other, we communicated, and we weren't pissing each other off. We weren't upsetting people. We weren't demanding that everybody be the same. And we were accepting of people's difficulties. So now I have quite a group of friends and I have a social life. I got an assistance dog who helps me with my autism. He helps me with my social anxiety. Basically, since meeting other neurodivergent people, I'm always out. I have done more in the last couple of years since we were allowed out after COVID than I think I did in the 3 decades beforehand. So shows, theatre, comedy, meals out, you name it, I'm doing it now. I rarely me say no. And I've got a job that is got a progressionable career. I trained as an associate audiologist to begin with. So that's now what I'm working as. And I'm now training to become a registered audiologist, which will take another 3 years.
Awesome.
I chose audiology because I had a lot of mental health problems all through work. I'd have a lot of time off sick through. It was called depression, it was called stress, it was called anxiety, it was called everything but what it was. And essentially it was burnout. I have a huge sensory profile. Now, I'm not wearing glasses here because I'm in a lower dimmed environment. I don't need to. I struggle with screens. Short times are fine. I can't sit and stare at them for hours on end. I struggle with lights. I struggle with sound. I struggle with noise. And I struggle with processing anything if there's too much of everything. So I struggle to process speech when there's background noise. I struggle to process what's going on if everything's too bright or so on the screen. I do struggle to see it because it's just all so much information. It just doesn't process. So of course I was overloading all the time and burning out and becoming quite ill. And I had to go for a hearing test because I was saying I wasn't hearing very well, but it wasn't, it was processing. And I thought, oh, this is a nice place to work. It's quiet because people are deaf. We've got to speak clearly. We're one-on-one. I have my own clinic room. I can set my clinic room how I like. And
It's so important to have your own space, isn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, I started it and I fell in love with it. So basically, I haven't really been off sick now for the last 2 years with mental health conditions because I have tinted glasses for the computer. I set the computer up with low brightness, and I set everything up for me. And everyone in my department's been brilliant. If I'm struggling with anything, so there was a time when there was a piece of machinery being installed in the clinic next door. I couldn't cope. And my boss just said, well, we'll go and put you in another clinic. It was no big deal. In the end, I was wearing headphones all day. But nobody bothered. Where I think in the past, I'd gone to work one day in a previous job with sunglasses on. And everybody was really sort of, why are you wearing sunglasses? You're indoors. And I didn't do it again because I didn't have a reason to. Now I just turn around and say, I'm light sensitive, leave me alone, So having that diagnosis has basically put me on a career path, a friendship path, a socialization. I have a life now, essentially. Yes, I still have difficulties. And there are times when I wish I wasn't autistic, but it's a fact of life and I'm managing it now.
And just want to say as a bit of a background for our viewers. I was lucky enough to meet Storm through a local group called the Neath Autism Hub. We've gotten to know each other quite well. Over the past year, really. And can I just say the Neath Autism Hub is. We're incredibly lucky to have you in it.
And the Neath Autism Hub is a brilliant place for other autistic people. It's open, it's welcoming, it understands your differences, it's accessible.
Absolutely.
Which so many places aren't. I use a mobility scooter. So wheelchair users, mobility scooters, it's accessible. And everybody is brilliant.
And I encourage everybody watching this podcast, please check out the Neath Autism Hub on Facebook. You study at university, and given everything that you've talked about so far, what is that experience like so far for you?
So for me, this is my second degree, and this has actually been a great deal harder because so much is digital, and I struggle with digital. Partly my age, because I didn't grow up with the digital apps and everything everybody is using, but also the fact it's screen time. So the clarity of information for me is horrendous. We have different modules for each part of the course we're doing, and in each of those modules is a timetable or a requirement of what we should do. And I've got to flip through different modules. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I've had to see my course tutor a couple of times. Instead of just giving us a list of, this is what needs to be done this week, this is what needs to be done, with all the modules put together, it's all over the shop. And for me, I need a plan, and I'm finding that incredibly difficult. On the plus side, there is a disability welfare disability section to the university. And I signed up to that the minute I got accepted. So I literally had signed up to that a good couple of months before I started. And I said, can I please come and see you, have a look around? And I think I had 3 visits before the course started. One was just an interview with my dog, because I've got an assistance dog, to check that he was safe to come to university.
Very important.
Because obviously they needed to be for safety and health and safety and everything. And I also needed to have things like what they call a PEEP, which is Personal Independent Plan, what buildings I could access because I use a scooter, what would I do in a case of emergency, a second, somebody to get hold of if I was taken away by ambulance and the dog didn't go, So we did that, where I got to know somebody. Another trait of mine, whether it's related to the autism or not, it's a higher risk, a high chance because I'm autistic. I have what's called prosopagnosia, which means I'm face blind. So I struggle big time to recognize people. I always describe it like I look at people like a Lego person. So I see the hair, the glasses. So it makes me incredibly anxious going to places. And we discussed that. So basically, my lecturers were, for the first, until I got the hang of it, they would introduce, every time they'd speak to me, they would introduce themselves first, because I wasn't always sure who I was talking to. Then I went around again another day, once everything had been passed and I could go with my dog and my scooter and everything else. And we went around the university to see where I could go, where things were, introduce me to people. And then the third time I just went around to be introduced to all the disability sections and the accessible, what those accessible things. So there's an autism group in the university. I have the adjustments I needed. So I have adjustments made where I work on different color paper if we have things on paper. When I have my exams, I sit in a separate room with no lighting. So it has natural light, nobody around to distract me and to confuse me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been really, really useful. But what I will say, nobody's going to offer you these things. You have to basically go knocking on the door, say, "Oi, I'm neurodivergent, what can you help me with?" But I also think you need to know what you need. So I have noticed that older people who get late diagnosis tend to know what they need because they've come to a diagnosis because they're struggling with A, B, and C. Children coming up into the working environment or the university environment sometimes don't know what they need because they've had adjustments put in place all their school life and even at home, but never explained what adjustments were put in place and why. So I think it's really important for you to know what traits you have because all of us are different. I've got friends who look at me and go, "What do you mean the screen is flickering? I can't see that. It's flickering." Or turn that light off, it's flickering. Or that plug is making a noise. That they can't hear these things. They can't see these things. And there's other things that my friends can't do that I'm like, what? It's easy, so we are all different. And it's really essential to put your boots on and knock on the door and ask for help. If you ask, if you know what help you need, nowadays you're going to get it in colleges.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. For me to get my when I went to university, I had a disability DSA assessment. Disabled students. Disabled students
allowance.
Yeah,
That's it.
disabled students allowance. Been a long time since I've gone over that topic. But for you to get a DSE, yeah, we had to contact myself and my parents. We had to contact the university, and I say me, my parents, they had to speak on my behalf. I believe. Could you tell us more about?
Just to say with that, what I will say is, if you are going to university, get proof. So if you've got a diagnosis with neurodiversity, take that with you. If you've got any physical difficulties, get it from the doctor, take it with you, because if you have the paperwork to say what disabilities you have, it is so much faster and so much clearer.
Got it. Absolutely. Just kind of like relays the information that they need to know about you. Could you tell us more about your work and what is like working in your sector as a neurodivergent person?
So I've been working in healthcare all my life, basically. When I was in my 20s, when I was at university the first time, I was working in nightclubs, I was working in pubs and bars, which were very busy, very loud, very noisy. And I was fine because I masked and I was young, I was fit, I was healthy, and I had the spoons to do it. Yes, there were times when we now call it social hangovers, don't we? I didn't know what that was at the time. I'd be out having time. I love being sociable, and then I was too bloody knackered to talk to anyone. Then I moved into healthcare, and I'm extremely empathic, hyper empathic and which actually can be a problem at times because I feel too much. And I loved it. I loved caring for people. I loved working with people. And then I moved into theatre. And the theatre is very bright, very noisy, lots of people talking. And again, I loved it. But over the last decade, I was really starting to struggle. If the radio was on or there was the doctors and nurses talking and somebody was asking me a question, I really, really struggled to process it. And my sick record wasn't brilliant. I was just overloading all the time. And for me, the first sign of a meltdown is I cry. I think it's because as a child, to scream and shout and break things, you got a slap. I grew up in the 70s. That was not acceptable. But crying was socially acceptable. So it kind of got turned into crying. So I'd be in tears almost every day at work. And it wasn't because I was upset. It wasn't anything else. It was because I was overloaded and going into meltdown, which again, I didn't know. Everybody just called me super sensitive, hypersensitive, and a number of other negative words. Having the diagnosis made me realise what the problem was, and that was my senses. Now that I've moved into audiology, for me, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect. I speak on a one-to-one basis with people all the time. I don't have to speak in groups. I don't have background radios or noises or anything because the person I'm speaking to has a hearing impairment. So therefore, they need no background noise as well. Again, I have my own clinic rooms. I set my own computer up, so I've got my lighting and everything I want. The only downside is we have to have good lighting in the rooms because for good communication you need it. So I have tinted glasses. But essentially, as I said, been in it 2 years now. I love it. I love the autonomy. I love the decision making. And it took me a while to learn a couple of the skills. Because some of the skills you have to multitask. So, for example, if I'm fitting a hearing aid, I work between 3 different programs. I'm talking to the patient and I'm flicking between computer programs. That took me a long time to suss. And I did think I was never going to do it. I just couldn't get it. and I ended up writing my own step-by-step guide, laminating it and putting it beside me and just working through the guide. And then one day I got it, and I can now flick around from program to program, back to the patient, program to program. But I needed that extra time, support, and non-criticism, and I was lucky. I worked with somebody who wasn't saying to me, how many times do you have to ask the same question? Or haven't you got it yet? Or you did it perfect yesterday. Why can't you do it perfect today? Nobody ever said that. None of that negativity. And it was, you'll get it. It is a difficult thing. You'll get it. That's all I ever got from my supervisors. And yeah, I got it. And now I have it.
You need that patience. You absolutely need that patience, and in the understanding why a neurodivergent person may not understand
Yeah.
a point immediately. Because me personally, it could be very easy for me to misremember information, especially if it's conveyed audially. If it's conveyed visually, I'm fine. I can remember pictures, images. I'm a very visual learner in that respect. But when information is conveyed audially, I routinely forget names. It's not because somebody's not important. It's simply because my brain is like a computer. It's processing so much information, visual information, and stuff like that. That information taken in, especially conveyed audially, it just goes out, and which is why I need a reminder.
Do you find you also your brain gets distracted? So I find it difficult to read textbooks, and I think it's because the speed I'm trying to learn at. So my brain goes off on squirrels and side quests. I'm trying to read a textbook, and it's going, "Did you do the washing? Oh, what are you doing tomorrow? Oh, what does that word mean? Oh yeah, that word means, and we did it there."
Absolutely.
So
yes.
I tend to find I learn better with a video recording, because it's like my brain is being more filled up that it doesn't go off on side quests.
I find as long as I have a very, very clear goal behind why I'm doing something, what I'm doing, it enables me to filter out kind of like anything other that I find irrelevant. And I'll give you an example. I did a law degree, and for me, a law degree, it really worked because our lecturers would be like, right, you've got to analyze a particular area of law. These are the books that you've got to do. These are the books that you've got to do it. And once I had that goal, that strategy in mind, and I would always meet with, my student advisor to kind of break it down a bit more into manageable chunks. As long as I had that in mind, I would always come back to basically the task that I had to do. So I would always go back to the book. I would always look for information that I would think is relevant to the task itself, and I would not stop until that task was completed. Would I get distracted? Yeah, I would. I get distracted by many things, from bright colors to sound to sounds and stuff. I would get distracted by that, especially in an environment where there were a lot of people as well. I don't know why, but just sort of like the visual kind of sight of people, I find distracting. I don't know why. It's just my brain. But as long as I had that visual goal, as long if I had it written down, my mum would always encourage me to write my tasks down. as well. As long as I had that task written down, I would always come back to. I would always come back to that task, regardless of whether I got distracted or not. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I hope it does. In Neurodifference's last podcast, we explored the subject for services for neurodivergent people. I know we kind of briefly touched upon the Neath Autism Hub. What do you think organizations or services such as Neath Autism Hub can do for neurodivergent people? And if possible, what do you think services or organizations could improve upon when it comes to providing services for neurodivergent people? Sorry, I know it's a long-winded question.
No,
but...
I think by having groups you can go to, it gives you a sense of community. I've joined different groups in the past and felt like an outsider. I can't quite fit. I don't know why, but I'm just not comfortable. I'm just not fitting. Whereas all the groups I've gone to, which contain neurodivergent people, it's much, much easier. I think it's because we don't use extraneous words. We say what we mean. We don't mess about with fluff. When I go into
push, I believe they would call it.
When I go to the autism hub, you don't walk in and say, "Oh, how's the weather?" and what? No, it's like, "Oh, you okay today? Yeah, right, fine. Do you want to play a game? Yeah." It's we have some serious straight to the point.
It's a quote line from one of my favorite films, Ready Player One. You bite right to the chocolatey, gooey center. At least I believe that was the line. T.J. Miller. If you're ever watching this video, I'm not sure if you ever will or ever would. I do apologize if I misquoted your line in that regard. Get right to the point. Beating around the bush.
I think that's one of the important things, but the second important thing is we're not misunderstood. So essentially, we tend to say what we mean and mean what we say. There is no inferred meaning. There's no unsaid. There's nothing to read between the lines. So, I mean, I'll give you a classic example. I was talking to a friend who said that they like. They said about a film or something. They said, "Oh, do you like that?" I went, "No, not really." How could you dislike that? I said, "I never said that." This would mean I said I don't like it. I don't dislike it either. It just has absolutely means nothing to me. But because I said I didn't like it, they were like, I hated it, which was not true. So just being able to speak without being misinterpreted or or as has happened to me many a time, people turn around and say, "You're calling me what?" "No, nothing." "You call me lazy?" "No, I just said, could you put that away next time? So I'm lazy." "No, I didn't say that. I just asked if you could put that away next time." So you don't get that. You don't get gaslit. You don't get bullied. You don't get just exception that, we're accepting each other. Obviously, we're not going to like each other because, again, we're individuals. And there might be people in the groups you don't like or you do like. And that's human nature. But it's just easier. It's a lot easier. And I think the other thing is if you ask for something within a neurodivergent group, I don't get, for example, I'll ask, "Can we turn one of the lights off because it's a bit bright in here for me?" And it'll either be, "Yeah, sure," or "Sally over there needs it bright because she can't see, she's visually impaired." I'll go and get my glasses. That's fine. Her needs are more important. There isn't the, oh, well, everybody, light is always on. Do you know that we don't have that social norm that is, because everybody does it, this is the way it should be done. We do what we need for what we as individuals need. And if we don't make eye contact, we're not going to get thought worse of it, for example. You know, if I'm having a bad day and I'm talking to people, I will struggle to look at people. Services, that's a big one. I've been writing a care plan for autistic adults admitted to a health ward. I'm hoping, it's difficult at the moment, I'm hoping to get something like that or like that put in place.
I hope you do.
And, sorry?
I hope you do.
Yeah, because there's things that a lot of neurodivergent people really struggle to be in hospital. And it can be all sorts of things, from the lights, the smells, not knowing what they're doing. And it isn't seen to be taken into consideration, especially with people who present as if they have no care needs. So I'm not going to use the levels that they used to be used, because there is no levels, as we all know, in neurodivergence. It's a spectrum, as in a spider spectrum, not a... So on a day-to-day basis, I appear as having low support needs, and I mask very well when I need to, and I cope quite well. And there's a lot of people like that in the world. But you put me as a patient in hospital, I don't cope. I need that light above my head turned off. I need the curtains pulled round. I need to know exactly what's happening. And you don't get that all the time. They're like, well, the lights are... Why do you... The last time I was in hospital, I kept... Pull the curtains. Close the curtains. And every 5 minutes, somebody would be opening. Close the bloody curtains. And they were like, why do you need the curtains closed? Because I'm overwhelmed in this ward, you know, with all these people. It's overwhelming. I'm going to go into meltdown, and then I'm going to become what you would consider aggressive. I'm not. I will shout. I will scream. You can't touch me, because I don't like being touched anyway. But if I'm totally stressed and you touch me, I'll hit you. Not because I want to, but because I just can't. My brain is just flooded with sensations, and I can't cope. So keep the curtains closed. Let me just stay in my own little bubble, and I'll be a fine patient. But if you don't, I'm not going to be cooperative, and that's not going to be good for me. It's not going to be good for you. So we need to start thinking about these things. I saw a dentist recently who did. They handed me a pair of dark glasses. They asked me every time before they touched me. They explained to me every single thing they were going to do before they did it. And yeah, I was still overwhelmed at the end of it and shaking like a leaf. They didn't want me to leave because I looked like I was about to pass out, because I was trembling from head to foot. But it was still a better experience than what I'd had in the past, where it's like, stop, and the light's shining in your eyes, and like, I can't cope with this.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
But yeah, that dentist was very, very... And what did it take her? In the whole appointment, it might have taken her a minute longer than it took her without doing all those little extra steps. So she was brilliant, definitely. When you can include neurodiversity into your setup, you're going to make people happier. It isn't really time consuming, especially when you get good at it. And maybe the other thing is, don't assume you've got an autistic person, an ADHD person, someone with Tourette's, whatever in front of you. Do not assume that they are this. Ask them. Do you have any needs? Can I support you in any way? Not just, oh my God, she's autistic. She's not going to understand what we're doing. She's not going to want this. She's not going to want that. No.
Keep an open
I
mind.
go into the room. How can I support you? I can't tolerate lights. I won't hear if you're not looking at me and I'm not seeing you. And please don't touch me because I hate it. And I go through the roof. That's my requirements. And how difficult is that?
Absolutely. Well, not. It's it's not difficult. I don't. I don't think it's difficult at all. And quite honestly, I think it should be the practice of any clinic, dentist, hospital, to take in details of how best to care for neurodivergent people. In fact, um, I don't think I'm mistaken in saying this. I don't know it for certain, but I believe that any one of those organizations, it's compulsory to have training on neurodivergent conditions like autism, ADHD. I prefer to think of it as just neurodivergence. That
Or just neurodifferences, it's just,
neurodifferences, yeah.
and it
Hence the name of the channel.
basically it's individuality, because it's not just about neurodiversity when you're dealing with services. It's about individuality.
Absolutely.
And neurodiversity is just a different form of individual. You'll have people in wheelchairs. You'll have people who are blind or partially sighted. You'll have people of hard of hearing. You have people who are neurodivergent. They're just all different individuals that every business and every service should be adjusting for, so that every single person can use your business, can use your service. And unfortunately, that doesn't work. So many places will say they're disability friendly, and they just tick a box.
Thank you so much, Storm. I want to make touch upon the fact that some of our listeners are actually based in other countries. I believe some are based in the Philippines, some are based in the United States. So I think it would be very, very, very helpful for especially those listeners to be familiar with that. And I would also like to ask our listeners, Neurodifference is a truly global channel. We always look for examples of services in any country, whether it be the Philippines, Wales, or the United States, or Tibet, for example. I would thoroughly encourage, no matter where you're listening, if you know of a disability or neurodivergent friendly criteria in your local area, please pop it in the comments, and would would love to kind of cover it on a future podcast, because I think it is very, very important that we learn as much as we can from services, not only in Wales but across the world, when it comes to helping neurodivergent people. Storm, I would like to thank you sincerely for being willing to come on this podcast. It has been lovely having you on, and please let me know about that report. Would be I'm sure I speak for all of my listeners when I say we would love to learn more about that policy. You are a dear friend of this channel, and it would be lovely to have you on again whenever is most convenient to you.
Brilliant. The one thing I'm just going to add to this podcast is, if you live in an area where there is no services, where there is nothing near you, Facebook, Instagram, and other social medias now, make your own meetup group. Because if you can meet up with other neurodivergent people and you felt excluded and lonely in your life, you will suddenly find a community. And use those social medias, find people near you. We aren't a tiny portion of the population. We are 10%, is it? Something like that or more, and growing.
1 in 100, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's just autism alone. I reckon it's probably more, personally.
Yeah. So yeah, use social media, make up meetup groups, find your community. Thank you, Reese. It's been lovely.
Thank you.